Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7x7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy, and thank you so much for joining me for it. So the Ahsoka's Walkabout arc is the second of 3 story arcs that takes place in Season 7 of the Clone Wars, and it picks up right after the end of Season 5 of the Clone Wars. So we see Ahsoka leaving the General Jedi Temple area and heading toward the portal to go down into the lower levels of Coruscant. She has managed to scrape together enough money to buy a speeder bike, but that's about it. And we learned through these episodes just how much of a fish out of water Ahsoka is if she's not in the Jedi Temple or she's not on some kind of mission. And she's self-aware enough about this. At one point she says to Trace Martez, one of the 2 Martez sisters who we eventually meet again in the Bad Batch, but this is the first time meeting them. She says to Trace that she doesn't really understand people, and by people we can extrapolate that to mean just garden variety everyday people, right? I mean, she's dealt with people in politics, she's dealt with people in the military, but she hasn't dealt with general civilians very much at all. As a result, there's almost kind of a high and mighty vibe that comes out of her in some of her interactions. When she first arrives at the mech bay that belongs to the Martez sisters, her speeder is malfunctioning and she's able to crash land it on there. But when Trace comes out to see what's going on, Ahsoka kind of treats her as like, hey, you're on my platform, not I'm on your platform. Sorry, it's, my fault for crashing here. I apologize. Is there anything I can do to make this better, or can you please help me? Ahsoka's actually kind of, snippy with Trace. And she's almost resentful of the idea that she has to pay for anything to, get services done, to have her speeder bike taken care of, especially when she just slammed it on the launch deck of this mech bay and probably scraped the heck out of it. She also still has the very strict moral certitude that has been drilled into her with the Jedi Order, and so anything that's not even remotely on the up and up, she, has a problem with the Martez sisters, which of course comes into play with Rafa, who is definitely not operating on the up and up. But the ultimate fact of the matter is that Ahsoka went into this situation without a plan. The decision to not go back to the Jedi Order, we have no idea how long she had to sit with that decision, whether it was a spur of the moment decision or whether she'd been thinking about it all along. Whether all that time she was incarcerated, she was thinking to herself, like, I know I'm innocent. Once my innocence is proven, I'll get to go back to the Jedi Order. It seems like she's had enough time to think about it to think that, yes, I'm going to leave no matter what. And so that part of it wasn't necessarily a rash decision. But what to do next? Yeah, that seems to not have been part of the factoring in of anything. And so it's just her by fate falling onto the Martez sisters platform on level 1313 directly, as it turns out, that she's just basically letting the Force guide her for all intents and purposes. She doesn't really state that outright, but that's really the only conclusion we can come to. And she's basically just taken up with the first people that she has any interaction with. However, as Rafa says, like, her morality isn't going to pay their debts, and so she's going to end up getting dragged into some scoundrel type business in order to get by. In a way, this is Ahsoka's first step into a larger world, which is an interesting reversal of the way that Ben Kenobi was thinking about it when he said that to Luke back in A New Hope. As for the story itself, well, basically, we've got kind of a standalone episode with the introduction of Ahsoka to the Martez sisters, and then we're going to have a couple of episodes connected, which is Deal No Deal. That's the second of these 4 episodes, and then we'll talk about the rest of them on tomorrow's episode. And this continuation deals with them getting spice from Kessel and possibly selling it to the Pikes, but because of arguments that happen and moral high-mindedness and whatnot, Trace Martez makes possibly the most boneheaded move that exist in Star Wars storytelling and dumps the spice in hyperspace, and that was just extremely frustrating to see. And as this pair of episodes ends, they have been caught in a tractor beam by the Pikes and they're about to be thrown in prison, and yeah, they'll have to find their way out of it, which we'll again talk about on tomorrow's episode, and we'll see what else we learn about Ahsoka as part of that process. But for now, this is the start of our look at Ahsoka's evolving life after leaving the Jedi Temple, what she's learned, and who she's becoming as part of our look at these essential episodes. And that's going to do it for this episode of the podcast. It just remains for me to say thank you so much for joining me for this episode, as always. And may the Force be with you, wherever in the world you may be.
7x7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited, or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.